Alrighty, Paws Up Podcast, episode number 37, the basketball edition, I think is what we'll call it today. We are here with our whole staff and first time on the podcast, Alex Krutchik, but as always, here with Jake Gibson, Jonathan Mayer. Alex Krutchik is our basketball writer for the Paws Up Page and Paws Up Podcast. Alex, thank you for hopping on.
Yeah, of course. Already exciting night last night that I'm sure we'll get into, or on Monday night. It'll be an exciting team to follow, so I'm excited to be here and talk about it with you guys.
As always, make sure you guys all like and subscribe. Follow us on wherever you're watching. Obviously, we're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And let's just get right into it. Let's talk about what Alex was talking to us about here. FIU lost to Miami to a final score of 86-80. After trailing 17, they make a huge run. Then they go into the half just trailing by 3 points, 41-39 by 2 points. I'm sorry. And FIU it goes into the second half, makes a huge run once again. They lead by 12, and that lead is evaporated by the end, and FIU just isn't able to make one final run. Alex, just your overall thoughts on the game. Obviously, a lot of good things to take away from this FIU game. They out-rebounded the Canes. They forced more turnovers than UM, and for the most part, they just played an overall clean game.
Yeah, they played a clean game, and it was something that we noticed early on, even when UM was beating down on FIU and it looked like FIU wasn't going to have a chance. We were still thinking to ourselves, FIU is getting clean looks. They're getting clean shots. They're getting turnovers against Miami. They're getting Miami to turn the ball over. They're winning the rebound battle by a slim margin at that point. They're playing the cleaner game. They're just not getting the shots to go down. For about 15 game minutes, the shots did start going down towards the end of the first half and beginning of the second half, and that was what got them back into it. You see there on the screen for the people that are watching, 33% from three and 45% from the field. So it got better in the second half. But yeah, the first half, especially the first 15 minutes of that first half, just nothing was falling. But it made me feel good. And then when we spoke to head coach Jeremy Ballard after the game, he kind of echoed the same sentiment where, they lost, but it was the best game they've played all year in this, short season so far, just 3 games in. But he liked what he saw. We liked what we saw. It was a very clean game. And he even mentioned, the first 2 games against UCF and Tarleton State, they got beat down heavily. And he said, credit to those 2 teams, but we beat ourselves, right? We gave them a lot of help. But he said that when it came to Miami, they had to make Miami beat them. Miami had to come out and play a good game in order to beat FIU. So not necessarily moral victory, but definitely something that they can carry forward through the non-conference schedule.
Jake, after FIU guard Arturo Dean really just struggled those first 2 games. Looked a lot better in that Tarleton State game, but really just struggled against UCF. And then that second game dealt with the cramps. Third game, once again, we see him deal with the cramps a lot more, to the point where he couldn't even get into the game throughout the whole second half. He had to come in and out. But still, despite that, drops 19 points, 7 for 16 from the field, 3 for 5 from the three-point line, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Looked like the Arturo Dean we all know of, and the one that made Conference USA was the Conference USA Freshman of the Year, and was Conference USA All First Team.
Yeah, you said it. The Arturo Dean we saw against Miami yesterday, it really felt like the Freshman of the Year type player that we saw last season. I think a big part of that was that he didn't have to do too much. He didn't have to force up shots. He didn't have to hold the ball for the majority of those possessions. He was more than happy to give the ball out to his teammates. Of course, you had players like Pridgett and Hawkins who were very deadly from the three-point line. A lot of those shots were passes from Dean. And Dean's a small – I don't want to say a small dude, but I think he's one of the shorter players on the team. He still did really good rebounding-wise, 5 rebounds total. He whenever he did shoot the ball, he definitely made every shot count, right? 7 for 16 is a pretty damn good stat line as far as making your baskets count. And, of course, along with that, another great night for steals as well for Dean. I think that was a big part of why FIU had so much success in this game. It was that they kind of dominated the turnover battle for the majority of that game. I believe let me make sure I checked. At one point, they were leading the turnover battle 12-4, and they weren't getting a whole lot of second chance points earlier in the game. But during that run, in the second half. They were, and that's a big reason why they got out to the big lead they did. So, yeah, Arturo Dean obviously had a great night scoring, led the team in that department, but he was still passing the ball around, and he was even wrapped up with a couple of steals too. It was a great performance by him.
Looking at the side of things, Johnny, just when your team is not missing from the 3-point line and they're just hitting almost every shot, it's really hard to stay afloat with that type of a team. And that's really what happened in the second half of this game. Obviously, looking at the final score, it's a lot closer than everyone expected. Even Vegas, I believe they had the Canes favored by 22.5. So,
I remember seeing 30.
By 1.30, yeah, exactly. And Matthew Cleveland ends the night with 23 points, going 8 for 10 from the field. Did not miss a 3-pointer. Then you have Joseph going 4 for 5. Poplar going 4 for 6, and you're leaving your top scorer Norchadomir to only 6 points, and going into the half he had 0 points. Johnny, FIU wasn't able to defend the 3-point line well, but definitely were able to keep their top scorer out of making any damage.
Yeah, that was the thing, because Norchadomir, I mean, he was a monster last year, and coming in was a highly recruited or highly touted guy, and FIU really was able to stop. He had 11 boards, but FIU was able to kind of, really, muscle their way in to get those rebounds. And I think the big thing is the second chance points. You look at it, 24 second chance points, 16-7, led the category in offensive rebounding. So they were able to really make their mark when they needed the ball, and get offensive, points back. But, to your point about the 3-pointers by Miami, I mean, they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the nation last year. And, you get a guy, Matthew Cleveland from FSU, Hugo Poplar, Benzie Joseph, and they were shot 60% from the field in the second half. That was the big reason why they were able to come away with the win. And yeah, I mean, that's a team where I think Coach Ballard said in the press conferences, they're one of those teams that make you pay after every mistake that you make, and that's the Hurricanes did. FI had some costly turnovers, and Miami responded back with some big shots. But I think for the Panthers, maybe you thought you had some opportunities, maybe to keep it at bay when you're up by 12. But, this is a Miami team that is very, very lethal when they can be, and they were able to make a big run down the stretch and kind of hold on for a win that maybe they felt they should have had more. But FIU really made a bigger deal, and it really showed that the Panthers are, coming here to play and really want to make a statement after, a little more of a disappointing 2 first games.
Alex, FIU had 24 turnovers against UCF, 26 turnovers against Tarleton State, and last night, only 10 turnovers for the Panthers, showing a lot more ball security, a lot less silly mistakes. Just what does that say about this team, especially playing up to par with likely the best team they'll play all season long?
It says that no one is trying to do too much. No one's trying to be the star. Instead, they're playing more cohesively. Part of that might just be more focus on a big opponent like Miami. Part of that might just be that it's the third game of the season, so guys are starting to gel together a little bit more. They do return mostly the same guys as they did last year, but it always takes a couple of games to gel when a new season starts. To me, it just was the mark of a team that figured out, like, hey, we can win as long as we actually play together instead of each trying to put numbers on the stat sheet.
All right, let's kind of wrap it up here. Jake, Johnny, any last thoughts on this game as we kind of preview what's coming up? Because I did think Miami would have been the best team they were playing, but in 1 month or so, you have FAU, who's actually the number 10th ranked team at the moment. So yeah, they're currently dominating their opponent. They're playing their home opener tonight. So just any final thoughts on this game as we wrap up Miami Hurricane, the 305 battle, which is worth noting. I'm sorry, I'm taking this a little too long here, but Jeremy Ballard was asked if he would like to see this game continue every year, and he said obviously there's no pressure on Miami to do this whatsoever, just given the fact that they're such a good team and they're super grateful and thankful that they were able to set this up last minute, because this, again, the first time these two teams play since 2008. So that's worth noting right there, that it's been over a decade since the last time Miami and FIU squared off in the matchup. Obviously, they've played a couple scrimmages here and there, closed off. And Ballard said, there's obviously no pressure, but we would love to play Miami. They want to play Power 5 programs. It's not only FIU hoops, it's FIU football, who, talking to Coach McIntyre today, he really emphasized wanting to play Power 5 team. They're facing Indiana in the first game of the season next year for football. Baseball's taking on Notre Dame. They're taking on Miami 4 times. They're going to Iowa as well next season. So it's not just Miami. It's not just FIU basketball. It's all these teams going up against them. And then you have Coach Jim Larinaga, who's an absolute legend. He obviously mentioned the close scrimmages, and he puts an emphasis on playing teams in state. He wants to play FIU. He wants to play UCF, FSU, UF. If it's in a close scrimmage or in an actual game, and I think he definitely is open to making this happen.
Yeah, and I feel like they absolutely should. It's really cool to see these local universities go at it. That's what made the FIU FAU rivalries in pretty much every sport sort of must see TV. Maybe not so much football because FAU kind of had our number in that sport for quite some time. But at the same time, at the end of the day, these schools are very close to each other. Obviously, traveling will not be that big of a problem for these two teams. And while we do see this happen in baseball, I believe it's 4 matchups per season between FIU and Miami, which I do really, really like. I like to see pretty much every FIU sport match up against Miami at least once in the season. Football, even maybe bi-yearly, every few years. But soccer, swimming, women's basketball, softball, they should all be playing Miami every year. But as you mentioned, FAU coming up, that's obviously going to be another ginormous game. And I do think that FAU is going to be a slightly better team overall than Miami, but I feel like the way the Panthers played against the Canes should give them an absolute boost of confidence that they can go into Boca Raton and put up a show just like they did against the University of Miami. That was definitely a massive confidence booster, not just for that FAU matchup, but heading into conference play, because obviously I don't think anybody in Conference USA can really match up to the University of Miami right now. And the fact that they went toe-to-toe with them, you do the math, they should be very, very confident for the rest of the year.
I am curious to see what they'll look like against FAU, because even though you touched on it before, and it is true that FAU is ranked a little bit higher, and FAU would put up a good fight against Miami, might even win against Miami. I wonder what a matchup would look like against FAU, just since that is a team that they've played every year before this year. It's a team that they're more familiar with. Yeah, you guys mentioned that FIU and UM have played a couple of close scrimmages, but that's not the same as, of course, a real game matchup. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they match up against a team that they're more familiar with, but also a team that's more familiar with them.
It is worth noting, and I think, Johnny, you were there for that game last year, that against FAU, that conference game, I think it was the home game, obviously. That went into overtime. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was a very, very close game that, had they won that game, maybe FAU wouldn't be where they are today.
I mean, I think FAU. I think still FAU probably would have been, that big Cinderella team. But yeah, FIU. It was such a back and forth affair. I think FIU was leading at one point, and you kind of thought FIU could have pulled it out. But it was a really, really exciting game. And I think a lot of fans said, hey, there's some potential with the Soup Squad. And I think, that was a tough loss then. But I think a game like this yesterday add a little bit more. Okay, we have something here, because this is the Miami Hurricanes team that, if you look at what they've done in the resume, 2 years ago they were a Elite Eight team. This past year, a Final Four team. So FIU was able to, put all this effort in against a really, really good program like the Hurricanes. And now you come into this and you have a week where you have a game tomorrow against Houston Christian on the road. Then you go to the Caymans this upcoming weekend and early next week. And for FIU, you want to get back and start winning ball games. And I think a game like this yesterday, obviously it's a loss, but I think it can propel this team to really getting the confidence enough to start winning some ball games here in non-conference.
Yeah, by the way, shout out to Deshaun Gittins, by the way, in that game against Miami last night. He only had a very quiet 14 points, and all the talk has been about Arturo Dean. He was our player of the week following the game. But Deshaun Gittins really had a very solid game, 6 for 14, 2 for 7 from the three-point line. And he hit some clutch shots towards the end that kept the game close, kept the game somewhat in reach. But, man, a team like the University of Miami, they're just so talented when put under pressure. You saw that happen a lot during their March Madness run last year against teams like Texas and Houston. They were down in the second half, but kind of clawed their way back in and kept winning games. We once again saw that against FIU last night. I do think I don't like the idea of moral victories in sports. I feel like you either get the win or you don't. You kind of have to move on. But there's no doubt about it that had FIU beaten Miami, it probably would have been the greatest win in program history, would it not? Or at least it would have been up there, I would say. It's
Well,
top
they beat
3.
Michigan. They beat Michigan
They,
once.
they did beat Michigan, but the fact that they could have beaten, Miami, right? It's the Hurricanes, it's UCG, as we like to call them every now and then. And Kevin likes to do that thing where you hold the U and then you go down. Kevin likes doing that. That would have been so sweet.
That would have been pretty funny.
It would have been. I guarantee you, the FIU faithful would have done that too.
I was on Twitter, and during halftime, I think it was Chris Towers of CBS. He quote tweeted me. He's like, something very funny might happen tonight if FIU wins this game.
All I would say is all I remember is we already beat Miami in women's soccer this year. Nicole she did the U down. I would say this. I started dreaming about. I'm like, you know what? Are we gonna get back this again? The upside down U, but
it would have been great.
Hey, there's a good chance that baseball also beats UM this season. That team lost a lot of pieces in the draft.
Yeah.
And FIU baseball looks really good. Obviously, I think Johnny, we'll dedicate an episode to that another day. But Johnny, I do want to ask you. Obviously, you work with the teams and all that, and you're a big guy on fan attendance. There was a great attendance for FIU last night.
They had a whole section.
Yeah,
a whole section.
Like 40, 50, maybe 60.
Scott Carr, Heath Blake, President Kenneth Jessel.
Yeah.
Everyone was there, showing up and showing out. The whole baseball team was there, almost all of it. The gold baseball team in the World Series game was there. It was nice to see them. You could hear the chants from the top FIU. Johnny, just your thoughts on how much this rivalry actually what this could be. This rivalry is very fun. You look at baseball when we travel over to Coral Gables, there is a pretty good showing for FIU, and same goes for soccer, and maybe one day we'll see them go up against the football team once again. But just your thoughts on the amount of FIU fans that were at the Watsco Center.
Yeah, I was impressed and I wasn't surprised. I think this is a game where you play a Miami Hurricanes team you haven't played since 2008. It's a 15-minute drive from the campus, maybe 20-minute, depending on traffic. And you saw there was a fan base. I know they had a little alumni event before the game, a couple blocks away at a brewery. But I knew this would be a good opportunity for fans to come out. And I just think that it just shows that this is something that you want to have more and more. It's an in-city rivalry or in-county rivalry that everybody loves. And obviously, it's Power 5 and mid-major, but I think this is a rivalry you want to have in non-conference. It creates more of an atmosphere, a more of a rivalry sense. And we saw yesterday where there was a whole big section. I mean, there at one point I heard people cheering, and you kind of thought it's the Hurricanes. But nope, it's FIU score because I was looking down. Yeah, so there was a lot of people there, and I was impressed. And I really want to see this continue on. Next year for basketball, obviously we'll have this with baseball coming up in the spring.
Yeah. Was Juan Soto at that game?
Juan Soto was at the game. Now
it was the place to be last night.
It was on a Monday night
versus UM. Yeah.
Where was he sitting? He was in.
He was courtside. He had to.
Okay.
Juan Soto sits courtside.
Yeah, we're kind of idiots. How did we not notice Juan Soto was there, man?
I guess I just wasn't looking. I wasn't. It's one of those things where if you're not expecting to see someone, you don't notice them, and I wasn't expecting to see Juan Soto sitting courtside at an FIU versus UM basketball game on a Monday night.
Yeah,
I guess Juan Soto, he's gone to Miami games before, right? Juan Soto.
Yeah, Miami games are pretty popular. Miami games are fairly popular. Obviously, the Miami Marlins, Jazz, and Solera, I know they've gone a couple times, but overall, you see a lot of big name people going. And the last thing I'll mention before we wrap up here and go talk about the season as a whole thus far, because there is a lot to get into down that end. From the media aspect of things, Jeremy Ballard has never been in that type of a press conference with every chair in that room filled up and you have people standing in the back. No offense to FIU, but usually it's just Jake and I and maybe Student News, or hopefully it'll be Krutchik, myself, and Jake now moving forward. And
Darren,
Johnny,
shout out Darren.
There a couple of back. Darren as well, he's pretty cool. And so it's nice to see that. And it was some big name reporters too. Tim Reynolds was there. The Inter Miami lady, Michelle Kaufman, was there. So it was nice to have, I guess, a nice media presence out there. You had a couple multiple Miami Herald, Associated Press was also there. So asking questions to Jeremy Ballard, and I guess the media left with a really nice impression because I saw some really cool tweets. One from Tim Reynolds saying FIU has a really good one, and Jeremy Ballard, and he's just 3 wins away from becoming the winningest FIU coach in FIU history. So
that's still crazy. Crazy. I think he's going to make that kind of history.
Well, we hope he will.
I hope he does it at home. I hope whenever he does get that win, it's going to be at home so we can celebrate with him. But yeah, just hell of a game. Kind of the perfect time as well for a game like that to happen, being on a Monday night. Of course, I believe the Florida Panthers were playing, but the Miami Heat were off. Obviously, Inter Miami's been off. It was just the go-to stop in Miami-Dade County specifically. I think, if I'm not mistaken, tickets were pretty cheap as well. So
It was $1.
yeah, $1 to get in, very enticing for people to go. And there were some empty seats at tip-off, but again, Miami traffic. By the time there were like 5 minutes left to go in the first half, there was a very solid crowd.
Anything you have to say, Krutchik? I know you were unmuted there for a sec.
No, just in regards to Jeremy, going back to Jeremy Ballard coming close to getting the FIU all-time win record. That's what makes me excited about the future. That it seems like for the first time in a while, the FIU basketball program has stability and continuity. Because he's already one of the most, he's near the top for longest tenured coaches at FIU. So that makes me excited because you can't build the program without continuity and without consistency, and it seems like that's what they have right now.
So I want to quickly share my screen and just shout out kind of the work that we're doing right here. As you can see, Alex and I have kind of been taking the reins of basketball. Jake will be on the coverage for the Houston Christian game, which we'll get into very soon, but kind of what we've been doing here. We have obviously the recaps. You see a couple feature articles as well. Arturo Dean, the real previews.
Oh, there's some good articles.
Really good articles. And you can find those on the Paws Up page. So make sure to go check it out. We're doing some really fun work there. Jake will have his Arkansas preview there very soon, and soccer coverage as well on Thursday. They're taking on Mercer College is what it is, Johnny? Okay.
Johnny's muted, but it is the Mercer.
The Mercer Bears, yes.
The Mercer Bears in the NCAA tournament, the first round. The only game FIU will be hosting, so make sure to go out there. Johnny, it's what, first 300 students or 600?
First 600 students.
First 600 students get in for free. Jake, just spoiling your news break a little bit there.
Are there even 600 bleachers? Obviously,
we'll see if they're. I don't know. I'll find out if they're gonna roll out another set of bleachers. Hopefully they do.
I have a good
feeling, right? They did that for the New Hampshire game last year.
But it was raining last time.
But they did it even 2 years ago when they took on Notre Dame.
Yeah,
they brought in bleachers. Not to mention
the one thing I will mention. I don't know if baseball's going to be there with their little smoke thing like they did last year. So, Johnny, you got to be my source on that one. But
I do. I'll
anyways,
let you know.
Let's talk about this season as a whole, because definitely as nice as this UM game was for the most part, they're still 0-3 on the year thus far. They've struggled a lot those first two games. Big issue was the turnovers. Obviously, you play against – it's one game that you found success. Now, it's about continuity. Are you able to keep doing what you're doing? Alex, I don't know how much you've been able to watch. Obviously, you're busy with work and Marlon's coverage, but from when
Panthers, shout out to Florida Panthers
and the Panthers too. Yeah, shout out to you and Alex. Make sure you guys check out Lemon City Live. Alex, what have been your overall thoughts on the season thus far?
Overall, I think that the Miami game was a step forward. I didn't like most of what I saw the first couple of games, so I'm hoping that last night's game against Miami wasn't a mirage. It wasn't just an emotional upswing game against a rival. I hope it was a legitimate step forward and a peek into what they could be. Because if that's the way they play the rest of the season, I mean, I can't see them losing more than 3 or 4 games in the conference and losing more than a couple of games on their non-conference schedule, aside from the Cayman Islands tournament that features some pretty good mid-major teams. If they keep playing the way they did last night, I don't see a scenario in which they don't go deep in the Conference USA tournament later in March.
Yeah, Jake, this is a team that's going up against Houston Christian coming up. Mm-hmm. Houston Christian, right? Yeah, Houston Christian, and then we have the Cayman Island Classic, which will begin against the University of Akron on Sunday. Akron. Yeah. So just your thoughts on what's coming up for FIU. Really cool opportunity going to the Caymans. I wish I was there at the beach. But anyways, Jake, just your thoughts on Houston Christian. Obviously, the team was also winless, looking for that first one, and then the Cayman Islands Classic, which does count towards the regular season, just for
it does. I feel like it was initially reported to be like a preseason sort of contest, but now they've moved it up to regular season.
They moved it up in season,
moved it up, which I don't mind. I do kind of like that. It's kind of like the NBA in season tournament that they're going to be doing. It adds a little excitement.
I hate that.
Don't?
I hate the NBA in season tournament.
Really? I
The
think
courts
the
are
courts,
ugly.
the courts are
The
interesting.
courts are ugly. The games are really dumb, in my opinion.
I don't get it either. I'm whatever about it.
Well, all right. Well,
It's-
whatever. Houston Christian, as you mentioned, they're 0-1. They've only played one game. It was
They're 0-1. I thought they're 0-3. Okay.
no, they've only played one game so far. They had to go to BYU and then kind of got shellacked 110-63, but they still had some very solid scores with that of Marcus Green, who had 18 points and like a bit over 30 minutes of action. Not to mention Jay Alvarez and Michael Imariagbi both had double-digit points. So they've already shown that they have some very solid scores on their team, but you kind of have to feel that FIU is absolutely on a high right now after how they looked against Miami, to the point where they have to go into this matchup and sort of just have the vibe that we are absolutely better than this team. We can match up against anyone in the country. That's probably got how they're feeling right now. So they have to start off this game aggressive and make sure that they're leading the rebound battle, especially. Don't give Houston Christian anything. Just capitalize on second chance points, if not sinking your shots in the first time. So if they get out to an early lead, I think it's going to be very likely that they're going to keep it all the way until the end of the game. And as you mentioned, the Cayman Islands, I mean, we spoke with Arturo Dean not that long ago, Johnny and I, he was so excited about getting to go to the Cayman Islands, just experiencing that. And as you mentioned, taking on some very solid programs, starting off with the University of Akron, and then you have some other teams like Marshall and Utah State in there as well. Some very high quality schools that will sort of round up the non-conference slate. And then after that, the non-conference schedule gets very interesting, but the majority of it is at home, which of course I would think would work to the benefit of FIU. But Florida Gulf Coast has always been a very great program. Then you mentioned FIU and Boca, then Stetson again, another team they play quite a bit. And then eventually you get down to your conference schedule, which I do think FIU will be a relatively great Conference USA opponent in that regard. But just to wrap up, I do feel very confident that they'll take care of business in Houston Christian. I get that it's on the road, and they pretty much had no time to rest. They had to immediately hop on a flight, head to Houston, but I think they'll get that done, and then they're going to have a lot of hype surrounding them as they head to the Cayman Islands Classic. You're going to hear about how they almost beat Miami quite a bit on the broadcast crew.
Alex, when you look at the Conference USA preseason rankings, FIU is not at the top. They're not even in the top 3. They're, I believe, 7th. And on Media Day, funny enough, Johnny and I were there, and we just saw on the door of that locker, it was a copy of the Conference USA preseason standings. You look at FIU through these first couple of games, the height advantage has definitely helped them a lot. Obviously, you have Jonathan Ibar, you have Seth Pink. You have a lot of height on this team. Mohamed Sonogo still there. I hope I get this right. Okechukwu Okiki.
There you go.
Did I actually?
Yeah, you got it. First try.
Wow, that was a lights out pronunciation.
Lights out! Lights out!
We have yet to see him play, but definitely one of the big ticket big ticket recruits for FIU. How much do you think that height is going to help FIU, and do you think they're better than the preseason rankings say?
I think, let's see, it's a good question because I think it just depends because, like I kind of touched on before, the way that I saw them play the first 2 games, I think they're exactly what the voters say they are. But then you look at a game like last night, and you think maybe they could turn some heads. But again, it's the consistency. I do think the height will help them, especially in a lower tier conference like Conference USA. When you have the height advantage, that really helps a lot with length. It helps with turnovers, helps with rebounds, and rebounding was somewhat of an issue last year in the first couple games of this year. So I think, if they use their height, or rather their height advantage can help them out. And I'm pretty excited about Okiki. He's a Tallahassee Community College transfer, junior college. Hasn't gotten the chance to play yet, but I think the once he is in, he's going to impress because he provides you with lots of length, lots of athleticism.
All right, we're going to talk about a couple other players that have stood out through the first 3 games. But Jake, I think it's time for your moment. It's time for an FIU news break.
Yeah, why the hell not? Let's get right into it to the news break. Of course, your source for a quick look at all things FIU athletics, just FIU in general. So let's start off with FIU softball. Head coach Mike Larrabee announced that the assistant coach Mike Myers has been promoted to the title of associate head coach. This will be Myers' third season with the team, primarily providing insight on hitting, defense, and base running. Myers has been around softball for just about 26 years now and has worked with Larrabee in the past, most recently from 2016 to 2019 at Central Washington. Next up, we had sort of alluded to it earlier, FIU men's soccer is going to take on the Mercer Bears in the first round of the NCAA D1 men's soccer tournament this Thursday at 7 p.m. Prior to that, a plethora of Panthers were named to the AAC All-Conference first and second team. So repping FIU in the first team as Eduardo Mustre, and repping the second team is Bernardo dos Santos Montero, Owen Travis, and Joao Dominguez. So again, congratulations for them. We'll wish them the best of luck against Mercer. Of course, we'll be there on site to provide some excellent coverage as well for the Paws Up podcast. Finally, for all the foodies out there, a team of FIU graduates recently had their restaurant in West Kendall by the name of Smoke and Dough as one of the top 50 restaurants in the country via the New York Times. The barbecue spot, owned by both Harry and Michelle Coleman, who both are 2008 graduates of FIU, Smoke and Dough was debuted in 2017 and features classic American barbecue, along with Venezuelan, Puerto Rican, and Jewish cuisine to boot. Smoke and Dough is on 4013 Southwest 152nd Avenue, only a few blocks away from the Modesto campus, and is open every Wednesday to Sunday. So that was your very brief news break.
Yeah, so we're back.
Oh, I'm hungry. Damn.
Already ate dinner.
Just to wrap it up a little bit, we're going to go through a couple guys who kind of stood out through these first couple of games. I want to go to the bench because it kind of feels like Javante Hawkins, one of the guys who really did stand out in 2022, really making a big impact thus far. Just look at his last game against Miami, look at a couple other games, got into the double digits against the Canes. Johnny, this is a guy who you've covered extensively throughout your years here at FIU. Jake, I know you as well, but yeah. Johnny kind of gotten the 3-point game going a little bit for Javante. He finishes the game against the Canes with 11 points, goes 3 for 7 from the 3-point line. But look at other games, he definitely, I guess, had a better 3-point percentage for himself that night.
Yeah, I think for Javante, he had some big shots. I think he was able to cut the deficit at some big times, and I liked the way he was playing with his hit 3 threes on the night. But he's somebody that this is his 4th year with FIU. He's kind of paid his dues. He's been a leader for this program, and I think he's somebody that has earned what he's deserved. And I think right now for his role with FIU is great. He's a guy where, if you give him the ball, he'll find a way to get you a shot or make a play. But yesterday made some key shots that at the times were big ones to make. And I think kind of were able to force some runs for FIU, but also was able to kind of make it a little bit of a closer game yesterday night. But I think Javante is gonna have another solid year for FIU this year.
Against UCF had 9 points, then 2 against Tarleton. It was just a big struggle for everyone. And then obviously against the Canes at 11 points. Jake, I talked a little bit about Arturo Dean, but George Pridgett Jr. has one of the newcomers to this FIU team.
Yeah.
He may be the team's best 3-point shooter thus far, really looking really good for the Panthers behind the 3-point line.
It never hurts to have a certified sniper on the team. And it's nice to have a player like Arturo Dean who can kind of clamp the who can drive to the paint, and then you have a player like Pickney who can pretty much guard the rim and go for those offensive rebounds. But to see a guy like Pridgett again, pretty much a brand new recruit to this team, he's already sort of popped off. He had a very respectable 9 points against Miami on Monday, but still, we've seen glimpses of talent from him, and it's been a while since this FIU basketball team has had not just a good 3-point shooter, because they do have some good 3-point shooters. It's been a while since they've had a great one, right? And if Pridgett's that guy, then by all means, man. Granted, he is this is his junior year. He obviously has experience playing basketball. I believe Polk State College was his prior school. So wished him the best of luck, and it's just adding in the completeness, I'd like to say, of this team at FIU, because they have the drivers that can get to the basket. They have the size, of course, for those rebounds. And when you add in a sniper like Krutchik could be, then just goes to shows how well recruited this FIU team is and how much experience they have as well.
Alex, Jake just mentioned experience, but Petar Krutchik definitely has been struggling as of late. Unfortunately, I'm giving you the player you have to talk about a little negatively here, but definitely been struggling from the 3-point line. Only 2 points against the Canes, 0 points against Tarleton State. What have you seen from him through these first 3 games? Just kind of struggling. Feels like he's kind of behind a little bit in the offense. And, I mean, defensively, he's looked pretty good. Well, there's a positive.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Defensively, he's still putting in work. Just on the other side of the ball, you would like to see him perform better on offense. He was kind of one of the first guys that I noticed last night when I mentioned, FIU's getting good looks, but they're just not finishing. He was one of the first guys that I noticed doing that. He was 1 for 7 last night, 1 for 8. One for 8, and he was getting good looks for the most part. He was underneath the basket. He was fighting for the ball, both offensive boards and defensive boards. But when he would get the offensive boards, he just couldn't finish, couldn't do anything with it. Because of the way that he's playing on defense and because of the way that he's battling for boards, he's still providing value, luckily, and based on the shots that he was able to get for himself yesterday, I think that eventually the shots will fall.
Yeah, Petar had the chance to kind of put FIU back in a really good situation, missed that corner 3 there. Johnny, last guy I want to mention just to wrap up here, Jonathan Abar really gotten off to a very nice start in his FIU career. First ever second-generation Panther for them here, and
very cool.
Ramon Abar, I believe, was his name. Is his father's name?
Yeah,
he was pretty damn good, and hopefully Jonathan Abar could be as good as his dad was when he was here with the blue and gold.
Mm-hmm, yeah, he also, fun fact, Ramon played with Carlos Arroyo and Roger Bell, so part of a stacked trio there with the Panthers with those 2 NBA legends. But yeah, really cool story with Jonathan Abar. Definitely, I think you would love to maybe down the line this season, we'll be able to get, more insight on that story, maybe see if we can talk to Ramon. I think that's an awesome opportunity to talk with just the first ever second generation FIU basketball player, which it's a young program technically. I mean, not young, but I think since the 70s or it's in the 80s. It's from the start of the 80s. So I guess I don't know. It's old. I guess it's an old program, but besides that, it's a cool story. And I think Abar, he has a size part. He can kind of do it all. He's kind of a mixed bag. He can shoot from beyond the arc. He's able to get inside the paint. But so far, he's a solid addition to have to this FIU team that needed size, and he brings it.
Alrighty, so as always, make sure to follow us on the Paws Up page. That is where you can get all our articles, previews, features, any news that breaks right away. We will have an article for you pretty dang fast. When FIU soccer made it to the NCAA tournament, I believe we had the graphic up, I would say, in less than 5 minutes, and then we had the article up in 10. So shows you just the kind of content we're providing there. We have previews for men's basketball, recaps, feature articles. Alex had the preview for the men's basketball game against the University of Miami. Then he also had the recap, and I wrote a little feature on just a couple other stats there. Jake had you with the live tweeting and the graphics. Yep. Arturo Dean was our Paws Up podcast player of the game. And before we wrap it up here, real quick question for all of you. We'll do a quick prediction time here. Alex knows about these from Fish on First, but will FIU beat Houston Christian tomorrow, Wednesday? And who is your prediction to be Paws Up podcast player of the game? Jake, we'll start with you.
Okay, so first question, yes, I think they will be Houston Christian. Not really much to say, but man, I feel like the easy pick is to say Arturo will double it up, man. So far, he leads the team in points per game, assists per game, and even steals per game. He's playing like he could become an All-Conference USA first team player, which I think would definitely be a very, very, very solid achievement for him, considering what he was able to do last year. But you know what? I'm not going to pick Arturo. I will go with Javonte Hawkins just to spice things up. I'm going to say Javonte will get the job done. He'll have a very solid game. Houston Christian it's kind of like Miami, is not a very big size team, if you get what I'm saying. But Hawkins has had a very solid season so far, averaging 7 points a game just about, in not a whole lot of it. It's only 16 per game, but still, some very respectable numbers, and I think he's due for a pop-off. So give me Javante.
Alrighty, Johnny, who you got and who's your player of the game? This is your moment to shine here. Show off all your positivity.
Player of the game. I mean, I got to go back to Arturo. I mean, he kind of was able to. I think you saw yesterday. I think 305 Sports did a little feature on him yesterday after how he standout play against the Miami team, and I think he kind of. We always knew what his play was. It was great last year, but I think maybe it's the start of something for him to kind of elevate his game. And I think right now for FIU, this is a really, really important week to get back, to hit the ground running. You have, your first 3 games were against Power 5 opponents, and game against Charleston State. You want to really wipe away. I think this is a clean slate for them right now, where you have a Houston Christian game where they beat Houston Christian last year at home. This is a game you should win, and then you go into Cayman's this upcoming weekend with an opportunity to make some noise in a very solid major bracket. With that, I think Arturo Dean had a great game, and I think he'll propel this team into having. I think it's going to be a good stretch to get back to their winning ways starting tomorrow night.
Alex, who wins? And Johnny, obviously, I don't even have to ask him just to make sure FIU wins, right? Okay.
FIU Panthers win, yes. There you go.
Well, give me a score prediction. We don't want to hear those.
You want to hear? Oh, you want the prediction, or you do?
Oh God, just say what you're going to say.
I'll be reasonable. Don't worry.
Be delusional.
I'll say FIU wins 77-61.
Okay, fair enough. That's actually not bad.
Not too bad, actually.
All right, Alex, who wins and who's your MVP?
I think FIU takes it. And then I'm going to have George Pridgett as my MVP. I loved what he did off the bench against Miami, and I think that there will be even more bench minutes against Houston Christian if it goes the way that I expect it to. And yeah, I think he's going to rack up a few 3-pointers and get him onto the board.
I'm going to go with FIU winning, and I'm going to go with Jaden Brewer. He's definitely been someone who's impressed me, struggled a little bit from the free throw line, struggled a lot. He was not very good against Tarleton State, but he definitely had a nice game against the University of Miami, struggled a little bit there. But I think Coach Ballard said it best. He's just scratching the surface. So definitely a lot to take away from that. He's still very young. So he was, I believe, freshman of the week last season at one point. He really just was getting it going for the Panthers there. So hoping that he kind of repeats the success from 2022, and I'll go with that. So yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Jake, you'll be there on Thursday for FIU soccer. I will be there as well, providing you with coverage. Jake will be on the live tweeting, and Johnny will be there as well. So we have that coming up, and I believe women's basketball is actually playing I
wanted to highlight that they're currently, unfortunately, they're down by 17 to Florida Gulf Coast right now. 5 minutes to go in that game, so it doesn't look like they're going to come out as winners there. But still, this has actually been a very solid beginning of the season for the ladies team. They are 2-0 after dismantling Florida National, and of course that nail biter against Texas Rio Grande Valley. They're playing a great opponent right now, Florida Gulf Coast. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to go their way, but after that, you have a 5-game homestand for the women's basketball team, starting with Coppin State from Baltimore, Maryland. Kevin, I mentioned that in the post game, I believe the pregame show. Then you take on Bryant, Georgia State, or actually Georgia Southern. My bad, Jacksonville. There's even FAU down the line, but Bethune-Cookman as well to wrap up that homestand. So. And we should do a bit of advertising for the men's basketball team, by the way, because if you want to go to an FIU basketball game, you have to wait a while. Unfortunately, with this Cayman Islands Classic kind of heading at us, their next home game is not until November 26th, which is on a Sunday at 6 p.m. They're taking on Kennesaw State, future Conference USA member. That's actually the start of a 3-game homestand. The second game is on November 29th against Florida Gulf Coast. And on December 2nd, they host the Long Island Sharks. Then, of course, December 13th, they head to Boca. So that should be an exciting one. I believe you three are all going to be there for that Boca game. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Alex Krutchik, Jonathan Mary, myself will be there. So, alrighty, fellas, we're going to wrap it up here. From Jake, from Alex, Jonathan, Alex, thank you so much for hopping on. We will have you definitely on a lot more. As always, peace out and paws up.
Paws up.